No, I've had enough. I mean, I really have. I'm so sick up to here of listening to this bullshit, to listening to these candidates, to listening to the questions that Matt Lauer was asking over and fucking over again about the emails. Endless emails.
Can I say something?
Oh, don't ask me. Of course you can. Everybody thinks we're on the verge of divorce anyway.
Without risking my marital status.
Oh, stop it.
I'm just kidding.
Pot yourself up.
Did someone say pot? Oh, sorry. You wait, you said, hold on. I got the wrong camera on me. Hold on. All right, that's the camera. The email. I will give you credit for one thing. I will say this, and I wrote a long blog today, people, about this debate inside and outside the Malloy house. The email issue in particular has gotten to be pretty specious. I do respect Director Comey, and I do believe if there was something there, he would have taken action on it. I don't think he would have just said, we'll just let Hillary get a pass. I don't believe that. So I do agree with you. I think that there are legitimate areas where she needs to be investigated, should be investigated. You know what I want to see?
Talk into the mic.
I want to see the Wall Street scripts. I want to see the scripts the speeches that she gave to Wall Street donors, and she won't tell anybody what it was said, won't release any transcripts of it, wouldn't let any press in. There needs to be transparency there. On the other hand, if I'd lived through what she lived through with Bill Clinton and Monica and Keyhole Ken, I probably wouldn't open my drapes, much less venture out in public and then, God help me, run for Senate and then run for president. I mean, I would be so public scrutiny freaked out. I think that she comes by her privacy issues probably honestly, seeing how pretty much since the time she married Bill, she's been under a spotlight. Someday I'll have to tell my favorite Bill Clinton joke on the air, but today is not that day. But you're right. The nitpicking, the dumpster diving, the taking the magnifying glass to every redacted line in an email and meticulously trying to unravel something, I think that those days are gone. And I wish they would stop asking about the email. I wish all of that crap would stop. There's stuff moving forward I would like to know. Right?
Okay.
I mean, there's legitimate things to investigate.
Now, when you use the word investigate, that means an investigation is where you, it's almost like a police action. It's where you have someone who is gathering evidence in order to mount a prosecution. No, wait, let me finish. That's what an investigation is.
Okay, I don't
No,
look
let
at
me
it.
finish.
I mean it as a journalistic investigation. I'm talking about like the
You don't think
Spotlight
that's been
team
done?
or something. No. I'm saying that there's a place for that to continue from legitimate Fifth Estate outlets, not Breitbart, not Right Wing Watch, not Newsmax, not these witch hunters, but from legitimate news agencies. You don't want the New York Times or the Washington Post or Robert Reich or Christopher Hedges or Greenwald to just say, oh, okay, well, we just won't look at it anymore because we haven't found anything yet. So
okay, well,
we might not find anything.
Kathy, this came up last night. This is the most investigated woman in the history of American politics. Now, wait, let me finish. You have this tendency, like Trump, to interrupt. Hillary Clinton is the most investigated person in the history of U.S. politics. She has been investigated. I don't know who hasn't investigated her. And what have they found? Nothing.
Right.
But you want the investigations to continue.
If there's a legitimate reason.
What would that be?
Again, I would like to know, for example,
What she said in her speeches.
in speeches that she had, but if you look at a donor list.
Okay, that doesn't take an investigation.
Oh, I'm talking about by an investigative reporter, okay? I'm not talking about a criminal investigation, a Justice Department investigation, an FBI investigation. Maybe I'm using the term improperly. I think that there should be media scrutiny from
Oh my
a
God.
legitimate media.
And you don't think there has been?
I think that there should continue to be. I'm not
For how
talking,
long? A year? A decade?
as long
For the
as
rest of
she's-
her fucking
as
life?
long as she wants to hold the public trust. As long as she is seeking a position where she is claiming to represent the American people, then yes, of course. What would you say? No? Would you say that President Bush, at some point, they should have just said, God, well, we've gone after him for 8 years.
What kind of investigation did we have on President Bush?
Well, it was a bunch of crap, but we had the 9/11 Commission, and it wasn't. I didn't think they did a good job. You think they should have stopped?
Okay, I forget what your point was.
My point is that I think where you and I agree is there are partisan witch hunts, and they're endless nitpicking and dumpster diving into the minutia of these email. And then there are legitimate.
You don't think that 25 Benghazi hearings?
No,
was
that was
dumpster
excessive.
diving?
Yes, that was excessive. I think it was excessive.
Okay, well, why do you suppose there has not been a clamor and wall beating and screaming about her goddamn speeches? Because nobody really gives a shit.
Exactly. And those are the kinds of substantive things that they should care about. Not what emails she had on her private server, but where her money is coming from. Who's giving her monster donations, and what promises is she making behind closed doors, Mr. Interrupter? What promises is she making behind closed doors in exchange for, I don't know, $25 million from a Ukrainian businessman? I'm just curious.
Well, let me ask you this. In the first place, every dime she has had contributed to her campaign is reported to the Federal Election Commission. So anybody who wants to know can know how much and where it came from went into her campaign.
And we know where Bernie's money came from.
Now, but you just said you want to know where the money came from.
Exactly. I want some transparency.
Well, it's there.
Well, no, I want to know. Of course, you look at that list. Look at the list of the you have to, at some point you have to say why. I know why my neighbor gave $50 to Bernie Sanders. I want to know why Goldman Sachs gave 50,000.
Well, why do you think?
Exactly.
No, why do you think?
Because I think that they're expecting
what?
Special treatment once she's president.
And do you have any idea what that special treatment might be?
Favorable nodding toward whatever corporate agenda that they have. I think that
let me ask you this then. If Hillary Clinton in these speeches promised stuff that if the American public knew, they would be highly pissed off. If that happened, do you think that every single person who listened to a Hillary Clinton speech across that wide spectrum of money managers, do you think that every single one of them is such a dedicated whatever, Democrat, Republican, whatever you want to call them, that not one would go to the press and say, hey, you know what she said? This is what she said. If one of those people wanted to sink Hillary, don't you think that by this point, somebody who recorded those speeches would have released it?
If they wanted to sink her.
Okay, and my question is, do you think that every single person who heard those speeches, thousands of people...
These weren't thousands of people.
Oh, they weren't?
These were selected groups of people
that
she
all
spoke
of them would rather see Clinton than Trump, who's one of them?
Trump's not one of them. Trump is his own entity. Trump is sort of like Pluto. He's not really a planet. He's just circling out there somewhere in orbit.
Let me move on, because I can't argue against. I mean, I can't argue with the idea out here that of all the hundreds, if you'll buy that word, of people who have heard her speeches, not a single one would come forward if there was some bullshit in there that I will give you this if you give me money, and reveal what she said.
Do you think that former President Bush's donors, in a closed-door session that he would have with private donors, would run out and tell the press if there was some impropriety?
I do not believe that every single person who was in a room in a donor's room. You have to understand something, and apparently you don't. And I'm not trying to be condescending. These big companies contribute to both. They don't bet on Republican or Democrat. They don't give a shit who's president because they make their own rules. No, wait, let me finish. Do you think the Congress of the United States or the president has any control over these predatory capitalists? If you think that, you're wrong.
No, I think it's the opposite.
Well, then what? Then
and I think
you keep making my argument.
No, I'm not making your argument.
These contributors contribute to both.
To own the candidate. And I would prefer one that wasn't purchased.
Well, good luck with that.
Trump hasn't been purchased.
Yeah, well, good luck with finding a candidate.
Not that I'm voting for him.
Any place on earth.
He doesn't owe corporate America anything. He's never accepted a dime from a corporation.
Okay, what do we start out on here?
Hillary's email.
You want endless investigations.
No, I do not. Oh, listen
okay, well,
to
how
you.
much? Well, how long then? A week, a month, a year, 5 years?
Legitimate
investigations,
journalistic
into what she said at her speeches,
into anything that might be relevant. Just like I want to see Donald's tax returns.
You sound like Larry Klayman all of a sudden. You
Larry
really do.
Klayman.
No, you really do. You really do.
Do you not think that they should be transparent?
This is what I said. Nobody's transparent. Give me a fucking break here.
But do you not think they should be?
No!
You don't think if they're pretending to be transparent,
no!
they should be transparent?
Should you be? Should I be?
You want obfuscation in the White House. You want a muddy candidate.
Kathy,
you want a muddy president.
You better get into the real world where it concerns politics.
I don't live in a fantasy land. I know which candidates have accepted money from which corporations. I know that 2 of them are on the head of the ticket from the Democrats and the Republicans, and only one of them has accepted millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars from corporations.
Well, let me ask you this then. Do you want every member of Congress, Democrat or Republican, to be investigated about where they got their money?
I would prefer it. Yeah,
and what they
said? Possible.
Well, and you don't call that fantasy land?
No, I call it a great purge. I think it would be fantastic, but we're not going to do that. But journalists are going to investigate the top of the ticket. They are, and they should. And I can't believe I'm sitting next to a man in a room who is arguing against journalistic integrity.
I'm not arguing against that.
They shouldn't look into anything.
I'm not arguing against that. Don't put words in my mouth.
Well,
I'm not arguing against journalistic integrity. I'm asking you how long you want to see investigations, journalist investigations, continue if they continue to find nothing.
Until she's no longer
alive
in the public arena.
Oh, horseshit.
Until she's no longer an elected official or seeking an elected position she's representing the people.
So you have not just a double standard, but a quadruple standard. You're insisting on this. I have not heard you insist the same thing about any other presidential candidate since I've known you, which has been over 20 years.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true.
A candidate?
That's not true. You don't think I was insistent on investigation into Raisin Brain? You don't think I wanted every piece of information that popped up about Harkin or about what was that other legal embattlement that he had his own land deal problem.